Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of the Cutie Cast. This time we're going to be talking about queer and trans people that also identify with being Asian in honor of APIDA Heritage Month this May. My name is Brady. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I still claim that I am a gay that can do math.
Hi, I'm Bella, she, her, hers. I'm a student assistant at the Pride Center, and I'm a Korean lesbian, and I am a gay that can drive.
I'm Olivia, Olivia Tran, she, her, hers. I am a coordinator at the Gender Equity Center, the coordinator. I don't know why I said like this. And I wish y'all would stop flexing because I can neither do math nor drive. I did. My fun fact is actually that I failed my license test 6 times.
6?
Look.
How?
I wish I knew, Bella.
If you ever need driving lessons. I do have a Subaru.
Oh my god.
Well, hello, I'm Astrid, she, her, hers, and I am a gay who can only do math. Nothing else. Fun fact, actually, today is actually, it's 1 year since I realized I was trans, so.
Ooh.
Congratulations!
So I made an omelet because egg cracking.
Oh.
That's good.
Love that for you.
Hi everyone. My name is Amber. I use any pronouns. I'm a student assistant at the Multicultural Center, and I am an engineer, but I also can't drive. So, a combo. I have a driver's license, but I have great anxiety about driving. So I might as well go back to driving school.
Just go to Bella's driving school.
Please.
I'll have one for only gays.
We are large, we contain multitudes. All right, so today, like I said, we're going to be talking about how we've experienced being Asian and part of the LGBTQ plus community, and, you know, adjacent topics. So, I don't know. Does anyone want to share particular parts of their experience of being Asian and queer and trans, and how maybe those identities have intersected for you over the course of your life?
I guess I thought of something just now. It just came. Was where, so I'm mixed, mixed race. I'm Thai, indigenous, and white, and like my tribe is Patawamek. But so I'm mixed, right? And I had a memory came where I remember. This is a little bit trauma, I guess. I was like, Mom, I don't know what I am. Am I like, do I like girls? It's like 5th grade. She's like, I don't know, but no matter what, like whatever you are, like either like one side, like boys or girls. And I was like, ah! And like she's crying.
No!
Sorry, Mom. I don't know. She's good now. But like, you know, just like dang, like me being mixed, and then also me being like queer, where like I don't know if I say I'm bi, but like me just being like everything just really makes my identity confusing, you know. So you're just like all the confusion, I'm in every single pot. So I don't know, that's where I thought of when thinking about this was like being part of all the things. It's definitely leaves me feeling sometimes confused. Or like I saw a meme where it's like, my identity. Ah! So I don't know. That was just like a weird rant. It wasn't like fully formed. You can edit this out, but just like
Oh, it was lovely, Amber. Thank you for sharing.
I think that definitely like it really resonates, and like even as someone who is like monoracial Vietnamese and identifying as queer, like you really feel that like pull from all directions to like choose something, right? So like I can't imagine like how much more that's amplified like by being mixed race as well as also like having these like multiple parts of your identity, because like the queer Asian experience for me at least has been one where like it felt very almost like non-existent. Like I felt like I didn't have a lot of people to like look to like base my experiences on. And so I always felt like I was like the first one who was like defining all of these things for myself. And so in a lot of spaces it felt like, you know, like I can talk about like being Asian in this space and I can talk about like being gay in this space, but like where are the people like me who like share both experiences, and where is that like sort of represented? Where can I see it? Where do I like have elders almost who I can like follow in the path of? So I think that's definitely like a feeling that I can relate to.
Like for me, it's like I feel like actually like so I'm both my parents are immigrants, and like the values, like they want me to like have a family, have a stable life, but the thing is, it's like at the same time being queer is also like that's very hard. and like it's I don't know, it almost feels like they're kind of at odds with each other in a way. I mean, I have found some very good role models. Actually, Audrey Tang, she is a trans woman Taiwanese programmer, and like just look her up on Wikipedia. She's like actually like, but yeah. It does feel like my identities are at odds with each other, especially like because my mom, she doesn't accept me really, so.
Yeah, I feel you. Like with everything everyone said, it's like I also felt like I was the first Asian ever to be gay, because you don't see like you don't have anyone to look up to that is both gay and Asian, especially if your family is like not accepting of you. So you never are like given experiences or given like direction or like any type of like talk about like how like there's a world of possibilities that you could be open to. And like as for my like family, like they're like very cis sexist or homophobic, and they don't believe it's a thing. Like you can't be Asian in that. Like that's if you do that, you're like a deviant. You're not like performing to your nuclear family role. And
I think
it's just like the Asian community just has a long way to grow in terms of like being accepting.
Like low-key, one of the things holding me back at the very beginning of my questioning, like, I mean, it dropped pretty quickly afterwards, but like, it was kind of like, I felt like, oh, well, being queer is a bit like a white person thing. I don't know. That was just how I felt, I guess, from how it was socialized.
Yeah, getting any kind of representation of queerness or transness in media is already hard, but then trying to also find representation of Asian queer and trans people is like, whew, it's an entirely different challenge.
And Amber, I also relate to the mixed race thing. Like being mixed race, it's hard to like find which side you belong in, kind of, because it's like always like, am I more this? Am I more that? And then like having to add in like being like a part of the LGBT community and like.
Yeah, I'm half Chinese and half white. And one of the things, like, when I was first coming out, I was like I'm a very mathematical person. So I was like trying to pin myself down on like this bisexuality scale, like percentage wise. I was like, my like 75-25, and my 85-15.
Get it, Brady, you do math.
Let one sexuality be a vector in our space.
Hate it. But it was like really interesting to try and reconcile all of that, because a lot of times I'd also been like I had like quote unquote pure Asian friends that like were fully fluent in like Korean or whatever, and they had an Asian, more of an Asian culture to like a more of an Asian community to be a part of. And I was like outside of that, and I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And then also feeling kind of like an outsider in terms of like, well, can I identify as gay, or do I identify as this, or what does my identity count as? Is it this enough to identify as that? Like as being Asian as well, I've experienced a lot of like, am I POC enough to be talking in like a space for people of color? And like that's a whole other box for me, especially with being mixed. But yeah, it's a very complicated existence. God, that was
Like in POC spaces, is it like, are you POC? And then in white spaces, like, you're definitely not white, so you're just like floating around.
I definitely think like a lot of like Asian communities and like groups, I guess, have this like issue where it's like, how Asian are you? And like these ways that are like completely arbitrary and trying to like quantify like how like authentic you are to the culture. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really help anyone, but yeah, especially with like all these other different parts of identity to consider.
And for me, what's interesting is like the indigenous communities always, accepted me. It was never like, oh, are you enough? Because always in the histories for indigenous folks, especially in the occupied United States area, like the United States has always tried to quantize how much we are, like by doing the blood quantum. So like the community's like, no, we're just going to accept you. Like, we're not about that. But then in the Asian communities, I wonder if it's because of the things of like perpetual foreigner, but then also like trying to assimilate. Like the things we're talking about, I'm like, it's so interesting where things of like, I'm thinking of like assimilation to whiteness because of being seen as a perpetual foreigner. Then I'm also and then I still really think about like Ashley, what you said about like, oh, like being LGBTQ is kind of like a white thing, and like made me think of something else, but I'll bring that like I don't know, it's really so many things are just like
exactly like that.
If you are watching the video, not watching the video, I just clapped my hands together and I crashed.
Beautiful visual metaphor.
I know.
Hey y'all, it's Brady. Sorry to interrupt this wonderful conversation, but I need to give you some news updates. First, let's talk about a news article that was posted by the BBC around the 30th of March titled Singapore Gay Sex Ban. Court rejects appeals to overturn the law. Unfortunately, to Bella's point earlier, it seems that some Asian communities still have a ways to go in terms of accepting queer and trans people for who they are. It says that this high court in Singapore rejected appeals by 3 gay men to repeal this colonial era law prohibiting gay sex because, quote, because the law was, quote, important in reflecting public sentiment and beliefs, end quote, in Singapore. So, I don't know, there's still a lot more work to be done a lot more progress to be made in some countries in Asia in terms of respecting queer and trans people. But we're working on it. Also, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the rise in anti-Asian racism in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been some pretty hurtful rhetoric on behalf of people in power, blaming countries in Asia for the COVID-19 pandemic, which is false. To help support you all during this time, the Cal Poly API Faculty and Staff Association has put out a letter of support that you can read at tinyurl.com/APIFSA statement. You can also go to that link and sign your name to support APIFSA. Also wanted to shout out to our remaining Queers in Quarantine events for the month of May. We have a queer trivia night tonight, actually, if you're listening to this on May 15th. We also have a movie screening scheduled for next week and Pans in the Kitchen on May 24th. You can go to culture.calpoly.edu and click on the events calendar for more details. Also, I wanted to do a quick promo for this thing called the Out Monologues that we're trying to start up at the Pride Center. You can go to culture.calpoly.edu/pridecenter/outmonologues to read about this initiative. It's a great opportunity to tell your story as a queer person on the Central Coast of California and help people know that there are queer people, there are queer voices that deserve to be heard and talked about. These monologues can come in all different kinds of forms, and you can read all about it at that website. Finally, just a couple shout-outs. Our social media, you can follow our Instagram at Cal Poly Pride Center, our Snapchat and Twitter at CP Pride Center, and you can find us on YouTube by searching Cal Poly Pride Center. Finally, you can subscribe to our newsletter at culture.calpoly.edu and clicking on the newsletter button at the bottom of the page.
Continuing on the theme of APIBA heritage, let's talk a little bit about the histories of non-cisgender and non-heterosexual individuals in Asian cultures.
And if you need some questions, it's like how has colonialism affected the presence of LGBTQ people in Asian cultures, and how can we work to decolonize these identities? Especially because when we talk about Asian cultures, we never talk about indigenous Asian cultures and how the language is affected by colonialization and what we had before.
I think this is I love this question. I guess Bella can probably relate. I was a history major, so I really like looking at
No, I'm a history major. like the second
Oh my
teenager I've ever met that I'm like.
I'm so honored.
They're kind of
agree.
terrible. They're always with white men that are like, I love Roman history.
Yeah, and you know
the
what's
Civil
so
War.
fucked up is that I didn't realize until like after I graduated that like I'm pretty sure like almost every history professor I had was a white person, and I was like learning towards the end of my undergrad like almost exclusively like Asian history, but it was like all white people. And I was like, can you like not hire some Asians to teach me about Asian history? But like I didn't even realize when I was in the space because like I don't know, I was so like inculcated into this culture of whatever academia, blah blah blah. Okay. Anyway, as a history major, I really love this question because I love to kind of contextualize and like be able to create connections and narratives kind of across space and across time, which I think is really important for people with like marginalized identities to be able to like connect themselves in some way or like feel a connection to like the chronology of the universe. It's a little bit cheesy, but I'm also a little bit sentimental. And so like really like looking back on it and like I think that's why it's so interesting where like so many of us in this call were like we feel like being LGBT was like somehow white because of the way that we were raised, that like our images of like gay people were always white people, but like truly the gender binary was brought to a lot of Asian cultures, like through colonialism and through like Christian missionary and all of this. And so if we like really dig into the histories of the places where we came from, a lot of the times like gender is more complicated, like sexuality is more complicated. And there are like long histories of not just like people who existed like for centuries outside of this binary of man and woman, but also of like relationships between people of the same gender being like very accepted or very like just a part of history and a part of culture. And so to have this like seismic shift somehow where like from those histories, like from the places where like our ancestors originate to like coming to the United States and viewing queerness as something that is outside of like our ethnic or racial identities, it's like really wild to me. But it's like looking back at those things and like at those parts of culture also makes me feel like, like connected in the cosmos.
But going back to like the histories of like Asian cultures, I'm in like the ES 335, which is the Filipina/O American experience, and it first starts out with like indigenous Filipinx people and how like they did not really see gender and like they like gender was all encompassing, and they did have like trans and non-binary people, but after like colonialism it was like not a thing anymore, and like because they tried to eradicate all types of like not normal behavior. And it's kind of wild that we do see like being LGBTQ as only white because it's like such a white dominated sphere even today that we never like really see it. Like how Olivia, you're like the GEC seminar about like adding the X to like be all encompassing, but a lot of like Asian people or like different languages, they don't want to add that because they think it's a very like Western idea, but they don't seem to understand that like before there was an all-encompassing language.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because in Chinese the pronouns used to refer to people is ta, and like spoken it's the same for men and women, but then written it was actually a single pronoun as well. But then when the Jesuit missionaries came along, they actually decided we're going to put gender binary on this. We're gonna have one we're gonna write it one way to mean women and the other way to write men. And when the Chinese revolutionaries kind of like standardized the language in like 1917, they decided to include it because Western equals better, basically. And yeah, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at like the design character is like there are like different sections of the Chinese character for, well, I guess now characters for Ta, and they both have in common this stroke pattern that just means like person, but then we attach onto it either something that like something that bestows upon it femininity or that bestows upon it masculinity, which is really, it was really interesting to me when I was first learning. I was like, hold on, why do we, but it said the same, but we write it two different, that doesn't make any sense.
For what reason?
Yeah, a lot of like, so I don't know much of, I'm Korean, but I don't know much about Korean history because a lot of it's lost because Korea is like a history of colonialization with China and then Japan and then the US. So it never really got to develop, like it developed its own things, but it was kind of like a mix of like different like colonialized like cultures like pressed on them. So like a lot of like, you can see like a lot of like individual like aspects of person is like taken from like how, like you said, like Brady, that like the Chinese characters, like you add on to like identify someone as their gender, which is what Koreans do as well. It's like immediately when you meet someone, you like say like, oh, you're my sister or you're my brother, and it's like nothing else. Like you're my 언니, you're my oppa, or like you're my 아저씨, like older man or older woman. And it's like, why do we need to do that? You don't really need to, like it's very like based on like respect and elder respect that you.
From my Go ahead, sorry.
Go for it. I was done.
Okay. Yeah, okay. From my understanding, like a lot of it actually comes from Confucianism, which is like basically Confucius's entire philosophy was basically know your place in the hierarchy, and women are below men always. And so like Confucianism already a gender binary, and like that, I feel like that kind of idea has kind of just made like Chinese culture generally pretty hostile to like anything outside the gender binary. Like that includes same-sex relationships and trans people, and like I think that's also why like Chinese like the Chinese language has so many different terms for relatives. Like,
I think it is wild though. Like, I don't know about any other Asian culture, but Koreans are like really like physical. Like, men can hold hands in the street, and like women, they like always hug and always are holding hands or like arms crossed, and they like act very friendly and like loving toward each other like in public. But then if it's in a different way, like if it was like two women kissing, but it's kind of like the same concept, but it's bad if it's between a loving partnership, and it's okay if it's between like friends.
Yeah, just gal pals.
Yeah. Like you don't know how many times I'll be walking in Korea and they'll like people will be holding hands, and I'm like, I want to do that, but with my girlfriend, you know?
But it's like a gay way.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's weird.
Thinking more about what Astrid, you were saying about the binary, it made me remember I have this it's like ethnographic field notes essentially on a specific region of China, and specifically like the culture of gay men in that area. it's called Tonju living, which is fun. It's fun fact. I don't speak Chinese very well at all. So
neither do I.
But the one of the things that I know is that this word "tongju," it means, like, if you literally translate it, like comrade, but it is often used now as like a colloquial way um, to refer to gay people. Their comrades.
This is the future the socialists want.
Comrade is the only gender neutral pronoun.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it is a gender neutral pronoun. It's just so they use it to refer to queer people. It's so interesting. But this book, it talks about how gay men kind of classify themselves. So, like, in English, we often say, like, bottom versus top. Like, that's like a common way to, like, try and identify yourself. But in this region of China, what they use instead of bottom and top is 0 and 1. So they literally use a binary. They literally use, like, they talk about it like, oh, he's my 0, or my 1 this, or my 1 likes that. And, like,
that's interesting.
It's so wild. Like, it's literally like there are 2 choices, and it's broken down so far, even to, like, even being associated with that with the computer binary system of, like, 0s and 1s. It's so interesting.
Do switches fall into that under 0.5?
You think that's too advanced?
Too advanced.
Yeah.
Need more than 1 bit to contain.
0, 1, 0. A 0, 1.
Switches are held in the Z state.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our discussion so far. We had so much fun recording it. It was just absolutely amazing to get to talk with so many Asian, queer, and trans people all at once. It was so much fun. We actually had so much fun that we recorded way, way more than we could ever fit into a half-hour episode. So we're going to put out a bonus episode next week with the rest of our discussion. So stay tuned for that. You can find us and full episode transcripts at bit.ly/cutiecast. And we'll be posting our bonus episode next week with the rest of our discussion. It should be even more fun than what you've heard so far. Thanks again to Olivia, Astrid, Amber, and Bella for giving us their thoughts on this episode. You'll hear from them again in a week's time. See you later, guys, gals, and non-binary pals.